Silent Hill has one of the most iconic introductions of any game, not only for its wonderful visuals, but that iconic music. There's no mistaking what game this is as soon as that unsettling mandolin begins to play, harsh and seemingly teetering on the brink. This music, which was of course produced by series regular Akira Yamaoka, immediately sets Silent Hill apart from all of its survival horror contemporaries, even before we begin to see the wonderful art design and character animation. The mandolin is juxtaposed against calmer, more melancholy guitar and strings, and this juxtaposition represents the internal struggle and lineage of the soul of Alessa Gillespie. The track itself, along with several others from the first game soundtrack, are indebted to a certain degree to the music of Portishead. Check out the music video for their song Sour Times from their 1994 debut album, Dummy. The first image we see is of Alessa, fittingly, as she is the linchpin of this entire story. We see her in the form of a photograph, a remembrance of who she was. She also greatly resembles a character from the film adaptation of The Legend of Hell House, which features psychic and supernatural elements. Her anachronistic clothing serves as a very deliberate reference to the Salem witch trials in the form of her traditional, puritanical woman's outfit. For those of you unaware, the Salem witch trials occurred between 1692 and 1693 in Salem, Massachusetts. Over 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft and communicating with the devil, and 20 of them were executed as a result. This of course has several obvious parallels with the storyline of Silent Hill, with Alessa representing an unwilling vessel for the god of the cult, which is clearly satanic in nature. Both these historical aspects as well as more contemporary elements of New England folklore and life make up the cultural backbone of Silent Hill. Several references are also made to Stephen King, the renowned horror author who is from Maine, which is both where many of his stories, as well as the fictional location and story of Silent Hill itself, are set. Alessa, as a teenage girl, outcast from her school peers, with supernatural powers and a religious fanatic as a mother, bears more than a little resemblance to the plot of Carrie by Stephen King. There's some more connections to New England and specifically Maine, but we will get to those later. Back to the intro video, the camera zooms into the frame as we both metaphorically and literally enter Alessa's world. We then crossfade into a scene of Harry and his wife finding a baby on the side of the road. Much like Mary in Silent Hill 2, Harry's wife will become terminally ill and pass away before the events of the game. Another zoom and crossfade provides us with character continuity as we see Cheryl, the baby and reincarnated form of Alessa, standing on the foggy streets of Silent Hill. Harry wakes up in surprise in the diner, one of many movie trailer-esque moments that we'll see interspersed throughout this intro video. The facial animation here is remarkable for the work done in 1999 by a video game studio, and even more so considering the fact that it was animated by a single person. Takayoshi Sato. He was single-handedly responsible for every element of the pre-rendered cutscenes in the first Silent Hill, from modeling to texture work to the animation. He continued his role as CG and character artist for Silent Hill 2, the last game in the series he worked on. Sato is an unsung hero of the series, in my opinion, and is responsible for so much of the distinctive look and feel of the characters of the first two titles. The next two shots are again pulled from the later in-game narrative, introducing the nurse, Lisa, vulnerable and dependent on Harry, and Dahlia Gillespie, a religious fanatic and the true antagonist of this story. The hard shadows and sickly color grading of her introduction clip here introduce her as someone not to be trusted, in addition to her eyes being enshrouded in darkness. The candelabra to the right resembles a traditional depiction of a devil's pitchfork, another little visual clue into her true character. Another shot of Alessa pulled from the game, fading into nothingness, caught between the physical and spiritual planes. A close-up of Lisa, her obvious warmth as a character, juxtaposed juxtaposed not only with her friendly facial expression, but the warm color tones of the scene. Next is Michael Kaufman. The focus is first on the gun in his hands before we pan upwards into a profile shot, an ambiguous introduction fitting for his position in the story. We return then to the diner with the introduction of the friendly police officer, Cybil. She crosses her arms and tilts her head to one side with a smile, sizing up Harry with a certain level of amusement towards his obvious confusion upon waking in that diner. The next bit is interesting because of the way the visuals sync with the music. We have our immediate pre-game narrative of Harry and Cheryl driving through the night, but we crossfade to Alyssa, wrapped in bandages and covered in burns, in an obvious pain as that mandolin returns in the music. She sits upright, almost as though waking from a dream. We next see Cybil driving past Harry and Cheryl on her motorcycle, but interestingly, the next shot is the first of several clips that have no in-game context or place in the storyline. We see Cybil, clad with her sunglasses, ending a phone call and getting up to leave. Was this her receiving an order to go investigate the town of Silent Hill? This is followed by some kind of confrontation between Lisa and Kaufman. Without context, all we can surmise is that it's some kind of argument, but after completing the game and uncovering the plotline, Lisa's role as caretaker to Alyssa, and part of Kaufman's orchestration of the secret preservation of Alyssa within the hospital basement, this becomes one of those scenes that becomes more resonant upon a replay, highlighting Lisa's increasing unwillingness to go along with this despicable plan to keep this suffering young woman, Alyssa, alive yet in pain for the plans of the cult. There's another shot of Cybil on the bike as we are approaching where the present moment of the story begins. Next is another shot of Lisa and another unused clip within the game itself. We see her laughing. I have no idea what the context for this is. Perhaps it's just illustrating that Lisa is inherently a good, normal person who has been led astray by the manipulation and the drugs of the cult. Again, back to the dark road as tension builds, both in the music and the way the moving vehicles are framed. And then a close-up of Cheryl, waking up and looking towards Harry with contentment and love, a contrast to the primarily negative emotions we've been witness to up until this point. The function of this shot is to establish the parental bond between her and our protagonist, Harry, to affirm why he's willing to go through the horrors of this town to find his daughter. In contrast with the relationship between Alyssa and Dahlia, the relationship between Harry and Cheryl is one of love. The next transition is simple but powerful. A crossfade to Cheryl, enshrouded in the fog of Silent Hill and facing away from us, and by extension Harry, in this point of view shot. Her identity of Cheryl at this moment has already begun to fade, and her spirit is returning to its origin point of Alyssa. The highway again, we see a motorcycle, presumably Cybil's, crashed on the side of the road, the first indication of things about to go seriously wrong for Harry and Cheryl. The next shot is again one without definitive context, as we see the normally stoic Dahlia with a look of horror on her face, running away from something in a strange environment with marbled Roman pillars. Whatever she's running away from is not revealed. This is followed by a very interesting shot of the Gillespie home. In the storyline of Silent Hill, this represents a place where Alyssa suffered and endured much at the hands of her mother, a place without freedom. This shot is a reference to the painting Christina's World by the artist Andrew Wyeth that depicts a real-life scene he witnessed in his home in Cushing, Maine. The story behind the painting is that Anna Christina Olson was a woman that lived near Wyeth in his home in Cushing. Olson had a degenerative muscle disease, and at that point in her life was unable to walk on her own. Refusing to use a wheelchair, Olson would crawl around instead. Wyeth observed this happening one day, and this provided the inspiration and subject of the piece. The house in the background, the Olson house, has since been made a National Historic Landmark. It's open to the public as part of the Farnsworth Art Museum. The parallels between Olson's life and the fictional Alyssa Gillespie are of two women who refuse to give up despite adversarial odds, and the reference to the painting provides another piece of credentials of the New England culture that is so well incorporated into the world of Silent Hill. The next shot is a brief but unsettling close-up of Cheryl, panicking in an unknown scenario. This shot is used within the game, within the mall stage, on the television screens, presumably representing the combination of the soul of Cheryl and Alyssa. We crossfade back into the highway for the final time, as a silhouette slowly walks into the road and directly into the path of Harry's Jeep. As she is literally caught in the headlights, we see reaction shots of Harry and Cheryl, as Harry desperately attempts to avoid hitting the person in the road, briefly illuminated to be Alyssa, or at least some kind of astral projection of her. The Jeep spins out of control, and for the first time in this entire sequence, we hear the startling diegetic sounds of the Jeep crashing. We fade to black, Silent Hill. In a little over 2 minutes, Team Silent has managed to hook us into this strange new world of theirs, one that has an obvious artistic and emotional appeal, even outside of any context later revealed through the in-game storyline. Special credit must of course be given to the aforementioned Takayoshi Sato for the visuals and Akira Yamaoka for the music, but the scenario and setting of Silent Hill are of course the product of the creative leads of Team Silent, a group of talented developers, artists, and storytellers who managed to capture lightning in a bottle here in this game, and in my opinion, again to an even greater degree in Silent Hill 2. There's of course much more that can be said about the powerful imagery of Silent Hill, many of which has already been said as a passionate and dedicated fan base continues to produce content online analyzing this wonderful game. One more interesting element about this introduction sequence is that it actually changes if you achieve the Good Plus ending, in which the soul of Alessa is reborn for the final time as a newborn baby. Harry and Cybil escape with her. Harry's wife is then replaced by Cybil in that segment of the introduction. She has the same exact animation routine, but the model has been swapped. It's hard to surmise the intention here other than as an Easter egg, but it does give me a bit of an unsettling feeling, as though we've entered a cycle that will repeat itself. That concludes this look at the introduction to Silent Hill. If you're a fan of classic PlayStation 1 CG intros, check out my similar video on Tekken 2. And if you're a fan of powerful, evocative intros to games in general, watch this space as more will follow. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.